And our final topic this week is a proposal to build a tiny home village in Albuquerque. These homes would house people who've been homeless. The city is considering 6 sites. The majority are in the southeast part of the city. Carolyn, there was significant pushback from some local residents at a meeting about the plan. There's more meetings scheduled. What are some of the concerns they raised?
Well, with 4 of those 5 locations, I believe, were sort of in the southeast southeast quadrant. And considering the history of that neighborhood, which tends to house a lot of that stuff anyway, I could see their resentment and their outrage on it. But on the other hand, I mean, the city should actually, well, not necessarily on the other hand, the city should locate these where the services are. I think that is very much a problem with the location issue. So, but with, any given night, we have 1,300 homeless people on the streets. We have to do something. We have to start somewhere, and we should probably start where we have a problem, and that is in the Southeast Heights. So.
Merritt, your reactions to this story?
I very much agree with what you're saying. The Sprouts at Central and Tramway, that's my local store. And about 2 months after they opened, one Saturday, every shopping cart was gone because they didn't have the electronic sensors that kept them from being pulled out. There's a huge population in the Tramway Central 40 for a number of reasons. And that's also a neighborhood where there are also some more affluent developments and a country club. So there's a little more, if you could say class tension there, and I think that's why it's bubbling up. I think the county has done a very good job of describing this on the website. It's a little hard to get to, but the website explains pros and cons, what it would do. And from a communication standpoint, what I would emphasize if I were a county, is we have to do something, and giving them shelter gives them a more stable environment and more secure, because right now, out in the open, there are issues of sanitation, there are issues of hygiene, and they're also open to being victims of crime themselves. It attracts crime because they're easy targets. Giving them more stability, giving them more security could help. But I've done military communications for 25 years, and the only thing I think harder than getting a homeless housing development in your neighborhood is bringing in a new squadron to Air Force base or a Navy base and jet noise for neighbors. So this is an uphill battle, because the not in my backyard mindset is very hard to overcome.
But I read about other similar developments around the country and other communities that specifically were there to serve homeless veterans. I mean, is that a need here in Albuquerque too, that we need to be talking about specifically the vets?
Well, and certainly we are. And the Department of Veteran Services in New Mexico does a phenomenal job looking out for that. And I think what we also have to look at is we have different generations of vets with different issues. And some of the homeless vets now, it's not the guy in fatigues you remember who's still recovering from Vietnam. It's somebody maybe with a traumatic brain injury who was a reservist who deployed multiple times, who came back, who had no job, and address what they need. I think certainly there's the Veterans Outreach Center right there in Southeast Heights. And so there are some services nearby, and perhaps that would be a good location for a veteran type community.
Laura, this story very much reminds me of a story I covered years ago in Seattle of a day labor center where the neighborhood folks said, we actually don't oppose the center, but we oppose not having the city talk to us, that the city's always bringing these things to our neighborhood and we don't have any say and we're not part of the conversation. Do you think that's part of what's going on here?
Well, I think there's a concern from the community that they weren't brought in earlier. I think they are being brought in now to be part of these forums where they show up and provide feedback. And my understanding from the media coverage is that they've been very negative. Most of the people there have been very vocal and very upset about this happening, to the point that I think Debbie O'Malley, who's one of the people that is supporting this initiative, wanted to leave one of the meetings right away because she felt attacked, and that's really unfortunate to not be able to have a useful dialogue in these situations. But I can understand why people feel that way if there's something that is already sort of on the drawing board and there really wasn't an open discussion about potential options. It was just sort of presented as this is what it's going to be. And so people are not happy about that approach. And what I find kind of interesting about this whole thing is why the tiny homes is the approach, because they are, they're not the cheapest option, so to speak. They're, my understanding is from reports, they're $20,000 a piece. And so, there could be other forms of housing that could be developed. And I'm not sure why sort of this is the one that's taking hold, whether it was the developers that proposed it or whether for some reason the city felt this was the most efficient. But I do understand why some of the community members are so upset about it. And I agree that the NIMBYism issue is huge. It's going to be very difficult to get these
And
things
tiny houses
built.
might be more palatable than a trailer park.
Could be.
Dan, your reactions to the coverage you've seen of this story?
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think kind of reminds me even of Santa Fe debate over affordable housing. I mean, everyone is in favor of it in theory, but when it comes to location, it's maybe it should be on the other side of town, or not kind of right next to me. So I do think that outreach is important, and to not make people feel like it's being thrust upon them. But at some point, if it's going to happen, it's got to be somewhere. And it's going to be in somebody's backyard. So I think there has to be maybe a better outreach on the county's part, but also, folks need to kind of, realize that if they support this, it can't always just be far away or on the other side of town.
Carolyn, big picture though, do you think that this could work?
I think it could. I think that bring in more public comment, bring in more, and kind of mesh and find the right location, it could absolutely work. And, properly run, it could bring more stability to the neighborhood. So we could all benefit in the end. You could help each other, get our homeless off the street, and maybe make our neighborhoods more safe.
Do you think there are some other potential solutions for addressing homelessness that we need to be talking about at the same time? Like this is one piece of, as we've discussed, this broader issue.
Yes, it's a very complicated issue. It goes back to poverty, it goes back to drugs, it goes back to not having jobs available. It ties into recidivism going on with our jail system. It's very complicated, but it comes back to poverty.
Merritt, what do you think?
Well, I think what struck me as I was researching this story is the $30 million in tax revenues that have gone into the behavioral health program, and they've so far have done a social media campaign. What are we doing with that money? Where is it going? Is there a plan? They have a lovely website explaining where the money's going, but as far as I could see, when it comes to I'm sorry, I shouldn't keep bad mouthing it, because the transition center for MDC, that's huge, and having a place so when you're released from jail, you have a place to transition as opposed to getting dumped downtown. So that was to me a big win out of this effort, and certainly will help reduce crime and perhaps some homelessness. But there's been a DRT increase for 4 years now. When are we going to start seeing some benefit from that?
And Dan, you mentioned affordable housing in Santa Fe, which is a huge issue. Maybe something we need to be talking about before people become homeless, those people who are living on the edge in housing that they can't really afford.
Right, and I'm sure that in Albuquerque that's an issue too. That kind of quality affordable housing. In Santa Fe, it's a little different. It's there's a real shortage of rental properties now. So folks can it can be tricky to afford that rent, and if you can't, then there's not a lot of other options.
Well, thank you all for sharing your thoughts on that and all the other topics that we discussed this week. We'll have more on our website, newmexicoinfocus.org. That's all the time we have. Thank you for watching.